We are continuing to explore the issues of self-esteem, and we've seen how convictions can be built in a child, but how they can be easily eroded if the emotions of that child are not under control. Now let's look for a moment at factors that promote these emotions. What is it in the home that can promote the emotions and thereby erode the self-esteem of a child? Changes in the family. What do I mean by changes? Some of these changes are not necessarily bad changes, but let's see how they affect the child. Let's say, for example, that dad got a promotion. Well, that's a good thing, but the promotion results in him traveling a lot. Well, he's going to bring in more income, he's going to see the world, he's in charge of a larger staff, but his children are missing him. And the absence of dad is a change in the family that is slowly eroding away on the growth of the children. The children are feeling insecure. The birthdays, dad is not there anymore. Sports days, dad is not there anymore. Oh yes, they have more toys in the house, but a child would rather have the company of his parents. A child would rather play with his parents than just play with the toys. So changes in the family. Some of these changes are more drastic than just promotions. Divorce, separation, death, anxiety, stress. Someone helped me find a very easy definition of the word stress. The difference between what you expect and what you get. And these changes are happening in the family. In some families, it is the norm, but your child is bracing themselves for the future and just wondering what will the future look like. Your child's emotions are affected by these changes. But there are other changes that happen, and parents don't really realize what's going on. Let's say, for example, you have a 14-year-old son and a 12-year-old, and they are in two different classes. You're helping them in their homework. The 14-year-old is struggling with math. The 12-year-old is doing extremely well. And then you decide one day to let the 12-year-old tackle the math of the 14-year-old. And guess what? The 12-year-old excels even in the math of the 14-year-old. And then you make the grand mistake. You begin to rebuke your 14-year-old by saying, look, even your younger brother can get these sums right. What is wrong with you? Ooh. Your goal is to help the 14-year-old to pull up his socks and to work hard. But what has he just heard? My younger brother is better than me. I will amount to nothing. When parents compare siblings, and especially when the younger sibling is portrayed as being better in an area or another than the older sibling, you create an atmosphere for rivalry. You create an atmosphere for sibling fighting. You create an atmosphere where the self-esteem of the older child is lowered. Now some of you may say, well, but it is true. The older one is not working hard. It may be true, but there's a tactful way of addressing these issues. Remember, you want to build the self-esteem of these children. You do not want to destroy it. Then there are changes at school. And changes at school may involve the transfer of a favorite teacher, or maybe your child's best friend has left this school to go to another school. There are changes happening there that if you are not in touch with your child at the intellectual level, at the emotional level. Remember we talked about the 4 or 5 different ways of connecting with your child. If you're not connected at the empathy level, you may not be able to detect what is going on. Now, Walt Hendrickson is a U.S. author. I claim him to be my spiritual great-great-grandfather because he mentored men that mentored men that mentored me. Walt says, when you mentally embrace something so that it finds acceptance in your thoughts, you will be unable to resist expressing it when the opportunity presents itself. Let me say that again. When you mentally embrace something so that it finds acceptance in your thoughts, you will be unable to resist expressing it when the opportunity presents itself. So if a child embraces the fact that they will amount to nothing, and then they go into a classroom situation where the teacher is cheering them on, it is not unusual for that child to say, "Sir, don't bother. I know I will not amount to anything. Why don't you work with my younger brother instead?" You see, they have mentally embraced that thing. You see, Walt continues to say, many of us are led captive not because of some overpowering temptation that's impossible to resist, but because the temptation found acceptance in our mind long before the fall. So when we accept negative statements about ourselves, when we accept statements from our mentors, our teachers, our parents, statements that incapacitate us, these statements erode our self-esteem. And when we are in a place where we are supposed to rise up to the occasion, we find ourselves instead sinking. When a person is struggling with their self-esteem, they come up with a belief system very, very similar to a person who is struggling with anger, to a person who is disappointed. And they say, I can do this thing all by myself. I don't need dad, I don't need mom, I don't need my teachers, I don't need my siblings. I will make it through life all by myself. Why are they doing that? Because they have faced disappointments in their lives. Their self-esteem has been eroded by the very people who are supposed to build it. So a child develops a system of dealing with anger, fear, and shame all by themselves. As parents, we need to be involved. Our involvement is very, very critical, but it needs to be the right kind of involvement. If you don't give it the right kind of involvement, we will destroy the very thing we're trying to do. And now, I want to talk about 5 areas of building self-esteem. I'll mention them, then I'll deal with them one by one, and we can begin to see how we can rebuild the self-esteem of our children. Number 1, we must teach them the importance of honoring parents. Teach your children the importance of honoring parents. Number 2, you must help your child to find value in troubled times. When your child is going through some stress, help them to find value during those troubled times. Number 3, we must provide healthy boundaries for our children. In a permissive parent home, there are no boundaries. We must provide healthy boundaries because within those boundaries, a child knows what is right and wrong and they can build their self-esteem. Number 4, we must treat our children with tenderness, especially when they're in trouble. When a child is shouting at you, you must learn that a gentle answer turns away wrath. And number 5, we must place more value on people than things in the home. Your child knows where they rank in that whole area of values. Are things more valuable to you than people? B.J. Thomas had a song that he used to sing. He says, loving things and using people, that's not the way it's supposed to be. But using things and loving people, that's the way it ought to be. Let's zero in on this first way of building self-esteem, the importance of honoring parents. The Bible teaches us to honor your father and mother. And it says, this is the first commandment with a promise. Parents, do you know what the promise is? The promise is that it may go well with you and that you may have a good and long life. God is interested in children, in adults having a good life. And He has placed before us the pathway that leads to that, honoring father and mother. Dark days lay ahead for children who do not honor their parents. And sometimes you think, it's my father's fault that I don't honor him. A teenage son who finds his father beating up his mother and decides to beat up his father instead may actually say, I did it to defend my mother, and he's right. But in the process, he has grossly dishonored his own father, and his life will not turn out well. Parents, how are you treating your teenagers? Are you giving them a chance to honor you, or are you giving them a chance to destroy themselves?